When a man truly loves you, you might expect him to constantly chase you, reassure you, and show you his affection in loud and obvious ways. But love, real, rooted, and mature love, doesn't always look the way we want it to. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it steps back. And sometimes it even appears like he's ignoring you. But don't be fooled by what seems like emotional distance. When a man pulls back, it may be the exact moment that he's falling deeper in love. Not weaker, stronger. You see, a man who is emotionally mature and deeply connected to you doesn't always show that love through constant pursuit. He might retreat into silence not because he doesn't care, but because he's overwhelmed by how much he does. This kind of man needs space to process what he's feeling. Unlike immature love, which clings and suffocates, mature love takes its time. It doesn't panic. It doesn't beg for validation. It reflects. When he starts pulling away, your mind might race. Did I do something wrong? Did he lose interest? But here's the truth most don't realize. When a man begins to love you deeply, he often finds himself in unfamiliar territory. He feels vulnerable, exposed, and instead of acting needy or overcompensating, he pulls back to regain control over those intense emotions. It's his way of testing both his own heart and the strength of the bond you share. It's almost like a reset button, not to escape from you, but to check in with himself. A man in love isn't just falling for you, he's falling into himself too. He needs to understand how this new emotional reality is changing him. So instead of flooding you with messages or obsessing over you like immature love does, he takes the silent route. And that silence isn't empty, it's full of thought, full of emotion, full of conflict. He is trying to make sure he's falling for you intentionally, not just emotionally. But here's where most women make the mistake. They interpret that silence as disinterest. They panic. They chase, they demand answers, but by doing that, you break the very energy that made him fall in love with you in the first place. Your stillness, your power, your mystery. See, love grows in quiet soil. It doesn't always bloom under constant pressure or attention. Sometimes, the more still you remain, the more he feels your presence. The more you let him breathe, the more he realizes that you're the only one he wants to breathe next to. And when you don't chase, when you allow him his space, something magical happens. You stay on his mind. He starts missing your energy, not your words or your attention, but your essence, and that essence becomes louder in your absence than it ever was in your presence. That's what love really is, when someone can feel you, even when you're not there, when someone starts to ache for your energy because you're not giving it freely anymore. He may go quiet for days. He may act distant. He may ignore your texts, but deep inside he's watching. He's testing, not testing you to hurt you, but testing the bond. Is it real? Is it worth diving deeper into? Is it worth surrendering his emotional control for? And the answer often comes not from what you do, but what you don't. You don't beg, you don't react, you don't collapse into emotional chaos. You stand still in your power, knowing that if this love is real, it will find its way back to you. Not because you chased it, but because you became the kind of woman who's worth chasing. When he pulls back, let him. When he goes silent, trust that the silence is saying more than words ever could. And when he ignores you, know that sometimes it's the most vulnerable confession a man can make, because loving you terrifies him more than losing you. And in that space, in that silence, you'll find your real strength, not in reacting, but in understanding. Not in chasing, but in trusting. trusting that love, when it's real, doesn't vanish when ignored. It reveals itself more clearly, because the man who truly loves you will always come back, not to the woman who chased him, but to the woman who waited in stillness, knowing her worth. There's something deeply powerful about emotional distance, something that speaks louder than words, louder than affection, louder than constant validation. When you stop chasing, when you withdraw your energy and go silent, not out of spite, but from inner strength, you awaken something in him that no words ever could. You stir a deep and primal emotion that begins to whisper inside his mind. Where did she go? Why do I feel this way now that she's gone silent? Most people don't understand how attraction works on a subconscious level. They think love is built only through closeness, through constant interaction, through repeated affirmations. But in reality, attraction is also built in space. Longing is born in distance, and desire isn't sustained by comfort. It's sustained by contrast. That's why ignoring or stepping back emotionally often speaks louder than attention. When a man feels your presence all the time, when you're constantly available, constantly giving, constantly responding, he doesn't have the space to feel your absence. And if he doesn't feel your absence, he doesn't recognize your value, not because he's ungrateful, not because he doesn't care, but because the human mind becomes blind to what's always there. It stops seeing the extraordinary in the familiar. That's why sometimes, when you stop showing up so fully, when you turn inward, he begins to feel something he didn't expect. Hunger. He starts to feel a shift. He can't explain it. He might not even admit it. But he begins to notice the silence. Not the silence of anger or punishment, but the kind that creates curiosity, the kind that forces him to look inward and ask himself, why am I thinking about her more now? Why do I feel this void? That's what silence does. It echoes, and the more he sits with it, the louder it becomes. When you stop chasing, you reclaim your power. That's when your energy stops pouring out and starts pulling in. You're no longer seeking, you're radiating, and that shift from seeker to center is what triggers something powerful inside him. Men are instinctively drawn to challenge, to pursuit, to the feeling of earning something they could lose. The moment he realizes that you're not waiting at the door, that you're not endlessly available, that you've stopped sending the emotional signals he's used to receiving from you, that's when he starts to feel the weight of your absence. And here's the beauty of it. You're not manipulating. You're not playing games. You're simply pulling your energy back to yourself, not to punish, but to protect. You're allowing space for him to recognize what your presence truly meant. And in that space, his mind begins to wander. His emotions begin to rise. The woman who was once there, comforting, loving, giving, is now quiet. And in that silence, he begins to feel the storm inside. You may have thought that chasing was the only way to prove your love, that being available and present all the time would bring him closer. But in reality, it often creates emotional laziness. He doesn't have to try. He doesn't have to think. He doesn't have to reach, but the moment you become scarce, truly scarce, he starts to search, not just for you, but for the feeling you brought into his life. He may scroll through your pictures, wondering what you're thinking. He might check your stories, trying to catch a glimpse of your emotional state. He might even pretend he doesn't care, ignore you right back, but inside he's battling himself. Because part of him wants to remain in control, but another part is panicking, realizing that he's losing access to something rare. It's that very tension that ignites pursuit, not because you pushed him, but because you pulled away. He starts to question his own behavior. He replays past moments in his mind. He begins to wonder if you've moved on, if someone else is getting the attention he once took for granted. And just like that, the shift begins. The man who was once passive begins to take action, not because you begged for it, but because you stopped giving him what he didn't earn. This is not about manipulation. This is about alignment. When you pull back, you align with your worth. You tell the universe and him that your energy is sacred, that it's not freely given to anyone who doesn't appreciate it. That realization doesn't push him away. It pulls him in, because now he sees you differently, not as someone always chasing, but as someone worth chasing. And when he comes running, he's no longer doing it out of comfort. He's doing it out of craving. He's doing it because he's seen what life feels like without your energy. And he doesn't want to feel that again. Sometimes silence is the most powerful sound a woman can make. It says, I see my worth, I protect my peace, and I no longer beg for love that should have been given freely. And it's in that silence, in that distance, that you'll see the truth. Those who value your presence will feel your absence. There is something deeply irresistible about a woman who doesn't give all of herself away, not because she's cold, not because she's distant, but because she understands the value of emotional mystery. When a woman becomes a mystery, she becomes unforgettable. And when a man encounters that kind of energy, it lingers in his mind long after the moment has passed. You see, we're conditioned to believe that love means openness, complete transparency, always expressing, always explaining. But in reality, emotional mystery is not about hiding. It's about holding a part of yourself back, not in fear, but in wisdom. Because what is rare is respected, and what is mysterious becomes magnetic. When a man feels like he already has all of you, there's nothing left to discover. But when you keep a quiet part of yourself sacred, when you remain calm, composed, and slightly unpredictable, he's drawn to you in a way he can't explain. Mystery isn't about pretending. It's about not always being emotionally predictable. It's about
Love, paradoxically, can reveal itself in silence. When someone truly cares, they may withdraw not out of indifference, but from deep inner conflict or fear. Carl Jung reminds us that the psyche operates through symbols and subconscious struggles, often leading to confusing behaviors. In relationships, this means that absence can speak louder than presence. Imagine feeling ignored by someone you care for. Instead of assuming neglect, consider, is this a defense mechanism, a retreat to protect emotional vulnerability? Jung believed that such avoidance reflects layers of unrecognized longing, unspoken desire, or unresolved guilt. In that quiet space, the heart is wrestling with whether to risk connection or remain safe. To navigate such moments, Jung would counsel self-awareness. Ask yourself, what am I feeling when I'm ignored? What drives my need for attention, for affirmation? By acknowledging our own patterns, our shadows, we can respond with empathy rather than fear. So, when love shows up as silence, let it be a signal not to chase, but to reflect. Sometimes, emotional distance isn't the end of affection, it's the psyche asking, will I be seen even if I step back? In that pause lies an opportunity for deeper intimacy, and for both hearts to grow.